My name is Olivia Hartford. I'm 32 years old, and the worst day of my career started with a tiny blue notification dot. A new email popped up on my screen that Tuesday morning, right as I was halfway through a client proposal and halfway through a cup of coffee that had already gone lukewarm. The subject line was harmless enough. Brandon Hartford has updated his work experience. Brandon is my brother. I should have ignored it. I should have finished the proposal, reheated my coffee, and gone on with my day. Instead, I made the mistake of clicking. LinkedIn loaded, spanning circle, corporate blue. Then the page settled, and there it was, in bold letters at the top of his profile. Chief Operating Officer at Hartford & Morrison Consulting. My company, my consulting firm. The one I'd built with my boyfriend and co-founder, Noah Morrison, over 6 years from absolutely nothing. For a second, I honestly wondered if I was having some kind of neurological event. I leaned closer, reread the line, double-checked the company name, then looked at our own logo sitting in the corner of my monitor just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Nope, same logo, same name, same company. My brother had just promoted himself to COO of my firm, publicly. I scrolled down to see the post he'd attached to the change. Excited to announce my new role as Chief Operating Officer at Hartford & Morrison Consulting, it said. Looking forward to bringing my entrepreneurial experience to this growing organization and leading our operations to new heights. Big things coming. It had 23 likes already. Comments rolling in. Congrats, Brandon. Well deserved. Family business. Love to see it. My stomach did a slow, nauseous flip. I hadn't hired him. Noah hadn't hired him. We hadn't even discussed it. This was news to me. My office door opened. Noah stepped in, laptop under his arm, tie loosened like he'd already had one meeting too many. He saw my face and stopped. "What happened?" he asked. "Did the Chen proposal blow up, or—" I wordlessly turned my laptop toward him. He leaned in, read, blinked, then read again. "What the—" He trailed off, jaw tightening. "You've got to be kidding me." "I wish I was," I said, my voice sounding weirdly calm in my own ears. It's funny how sometimes your body goes very quiet right before it starts screaming. Noah dropped into the chair across from me and started typing on his laptop. When did he post this? I checked the timestamp. 43 minutes ago. So, he announced himself as our COO before even talking to the actual owners. Noah's fingers flew over the keys. And before he even, actually had a job here. Apparently, if you've spent 32 years watching your older brother fail upward while your parents hand him opportunities like participation trophies, you develop a certain radar for nonsense. Right now, my radar was deafening. Brandon was 35, and in those 35 years, he'd started 7 businesses. All 7 had failed spectacularly. There was the food truck that somehow lost money selling tacos at outdoor festivals. Turned out health permits and food safety training weren't just guidelines. Then the e-commerce store that sold premium phone cases but couldn't figure out shipping. For 3 months, customers received either nothing or boxes full of packing peanuts, and in one memorable case, someone's used gym sock. There was the consulting business. Yes, consulting. That lasted 4 months before his only client fired him for missing every single deadline. The crypto investment fund that turned $80,000 of investor money into $3,200 and a pending lawsuit Dad quietly helped him settle. The app development company that never actually developed an app, just a lot of pitch decks and vision documents. The real estate wholesaling venture that taught him what breach of contract means. And most recently, the digital marketing agency he shut down 3 months ago after exactly 1 client and 0 successful campaigns. Somehow, none of it was ever Brandon's fault. The market wasn't ready. His partners let him down. The timing was wrong. Never Brandon. Brandon's ideas were perfect. The world just wasn't prepared for his genius. Meanwhile, I'd spent 6 years building something real with Noah. We met at a conference in Boston. I was a junior consultant at a firm that treated employees like interchangeable parts. He was a senior strategist at a competing firm that was somehow even worse. We sat next to each other in a panel about innovation in client delivery and spent the entire Q&A quietly mocking the buzzwords. By lunch, we were swapping horror stories. By dinner, we were sketching out a business plan on cocktail napkins. 6 weeks later, we'd both quit. Between us, we had $15,000 in savings, 1 small client, and absolutely no safety net. My parents thought I'd lost my mind. Dad spent 3 hours on the phone trying to talk me out of it. Mom cried. Brandon shrugged and said, "Sounds risky, little sis. But hey, if it fails, you can always come work for me." That was 6 years ago. The first year was brutal. There were months when Noah and I weren't sure we could make payroll for our one employee who was us. But we were good at this. By year 2, we had 5 employees and $800,000 in revenue. By year 4, we were consistently profitable and turning away clients we didn't have capacity for. That's when my parents approached us about investing. They offered $250,000 for 30 equity. We won't interfere, Mom had promised then, hands folded politely on the table. We're just investors, silent partners. They made their money back 3 times over. On paper, their stake was worth roughly $1.4 million now. This year, we were projecting $4 million in revenue. And apparently, they decided it was time to cash in that investment by installing Brandon in a position he was absolutely unqualified for. My phone started ringing on my desk. I didn't have to look at the screen to know who it was. Mom. I let it ring twice before answering, buying myself a few seconds to decide whether I was going to be dutiful daughter Olivia or CEO Olivia. Hi, Mom. Olivia, honey, she said in that soft, careful voice she used when she was about to tell me something I wouldn't like. Your father and I need to meet with you today. It's important. Can you come to the office around 2? Not a request, a summon. And she knew I'd seen the LinkedIn post by now. She had to. This was the follow-up call. What's this about? I asked. We'll discuss it in person. See you at 2. She hung up before I could respond. Across the desk, Noah was still typing furiously. I pulled up Mark's profile, he said. You're not going to like this. I already knew what he was going to say before he turned his screen to me. Our actual COO, Mark Chen, MBA from Northwestern, 15 years of experience, the guy who had single-handedly streamlined our entire delivery process, had just updated his own LinkedIn. Open to new opportunities. My stomach dropped. He thinks we're replacing him, I whispered. Brandon tagged the company, Noah said. Our entire team can see this. Clients, too. I grabbed my phone and opened our company Slack. There it was. 3 messages from senior team members, 1 from HR. Olivia, is this real? Why am I finding out about leadership changes on LinkedIn? What's happening with Mark? This wasn't just my parents playing with Brandon's fantasies. This was a public announcement, made without our knowledge or consent, already destabilizing the company we'd nearly killed ourselves to build. Call Richard, I said. Already on it, Noah replied, tapping his headset. Richard Morrison was our business attorney. Expensive, thorough, and the only lawyer I'd ever met who could make complex legal situations sound almost boring. He was also Noah's cousin, which somehow made him scarier, not less. 30 seconds later, Noah put him on speaker. Olivia, Richard said. Noah, what's going on? My parents are minority shareholders, I said, staring at Brandon's smiling LinkedIn photo. They just publicly announced my brother as COO of my company. We never hired him. We never discussed it. Our actual COO just posted he's open to new opportunities because he thinks he's being replaced. There was a pause on the other end. I could hear typing. Your parents being the 35% shareholders? He asked. Yes. And this brother has what qualifications exactly? 7 failed businesses and a pattern of catastrophic judgment, I said flatly. Another brief silence. More typing. Send me screenshots of the LinkedIn posts, Richard said. Both of them. And Olivia? Yes? Don't go to that meeting at 2 o'clock without me. The call ended. Noah looked at me. Conference room at 2, he said quietly. You, me, Richard. I nodded, feeling that strange, detached calm again. I'll be there. Then, because I had to, I opened Mark's number on my phone. Hey, Mark, I said when he answered. We need to talk. By the time 2 o'clock rolled around, the conference room on the 12th floor smelled like expensive coffee and impending disaster. Mom and Dad walked in together, dressed like they were heading to church, not a war. Brandon wasn't with them. Strategic, I thought, or he just overslept. Richard sat to my right, laptop open, expression relaxed in that way lawyers have when they're about to ruin somebody's afternoon. Noah sat to my left, his face a careful mask of professional neutrality. Under the table, his knee pressed once against mine. I pressed back. Mom gave me that smile, the one that said, I'm about to make your life harder, and you're supposed to thank me for it. Olivia, before you say anything, she began, we want you to know we've thought about this very carefully. You mean Brandon's LinkedIn announcement, I said, the one where he declared himself our new COO this morning? That carefully thought-out plan. Dad's jaw tightened. We asked him to wait until after this meeting, he said. He got excited. He got excited about a job he doesn't have, I replied. That excitement is currently destabilizing my leadership team. Mom folded her hands. Your father and I think it's time to bring Brandon on board in a leadership capacity. Chief Operating Officer is the natural fit. We already have a COO, I said. Mark Chen. Mark could shift to a different role, Dad said. Director of Operations, maybe. Brandon would supervise him. Richard cleared his throat gently. Before we continue, he said, I need to clarify something. Are you, as 35% minority shareholders, attempting to force a major operational decision on the company against the wishes of the majority shareholder and management? Dad turned to stare at him, like he'd only just realized there was a fourth person at the table. And you are? He asked, voice cool. Richard Morrison, he said pleasantly, attorney for Hartford and Morrison Consulting. I'm here to ensure this conversation stays within the bounds of your shareholder agreement. Mom's smile vanished. We don't need lawyers for a family discussion. You made it a legal discussion, Richard replied, when your son publicly announced an employment status that doesn't exist. That creates liability issues for the company. Brandon is family, Dad said, as if that word should override all others. This is a family business now. We own 35%. That entitles us to have a say. A say, Richard agreed. Not unilateral control, especially not over hiring decisions, which are explicitly reserved for management discretion in your operating agreement. Dad's face flushed. He hadn't expected resistance. He'd expected me to fold. I'd spent my entire life folding. Not today, Olivia, Mom said, her voice softening, turning from legal to emotional in a breath. Brandon needs this. He struggled. He just needs an opportunity to prove himself. That's what family does. We help each other. At the expense of what? I asked. Our actual COO, our team, our clients, the people who put their trust in us? Mark will understand, Dad said. He can adapt. Mark is actively looking for other jobs right now, I shot back, because he thinks we're replacing him with someone who announced himself on LinkedIn. 3 of our senior consultants have already messaged me asking what's going on. You didn't just suggest Brandon join the company. You announced it publicly before even asking me. Silence settled over the room for a moment, thick as fog. That was when I realized something with horrible clarity. They had never really believed this was my company. In their minds, it was their investment, their leverage, their eventual lifeboat for Brandon. They had always planned to put him here. It was just a matter of time. I took a slow breath. My hand shook under the table. I curled it into a fist. Here's what's going to happen, I said. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder Richard and I had put together in the 3 hours since that morning's call. My fingers didn't tremble when I slid it across the table. That felt like a small miracle. Dad frowned and opened it. His eyes moved across the first page. Confusion flickered, then anger. What is this? He demanded. A notice of buyout exercise, I said. I'm purchasing your 35% stake at fair market value. $750,000 based on our most recent independent valuation. Payment in full within 30 days of acceptance. You can't do this, Dad said. Actually, Richard said calmly, she can. Section 7.3 of your operating agreement. Either party may trigger a buyout at fair market value with 30 days' notice. This clause exists precisely to handle situations where minority shareholders become disruptive to the operation of the business. We're your parents, Mom whispered, eyes wide and wet. You're minority shareholders, I said quietly, who just attempted to force an unqualified hire through public pressure. I met her eyes and, for the first time in my adult life, did not look away. And I'm not going to let you burn down what I built to give Brandon his 8th chance. Dad's hands were shaking as he held the folder. You're overreacting, he said. This is ridiculous. We own 35%. You don't get to just push us out because you're having a tantrum. Harold, Richard said mildly, this isn't a tantrum. It's a contract. You signed it. Do you remember that? We went through this exact clause 2 years ago when you invested. Dad ignored him, glaring at me instead. You wouldn't even have this business without our money, he snapped. We took a risk on you. This is how you repay us? A small part of me flinched. The old part. The teenager who begged for permission, slips to be signed, who tried to earn praise with straight A's and invisible needs. That version of me would have backed down, apologized, tried to mediate. The woman sitting here, the CEO of a multi-million-dollar firm, just folded her hands on the table. You took a risk, I agreed, and you were paid for that risk. 3 times over. This isn't revenge. This is me protecting the company from behavior that's already harming it. You're going to regret this, he said. Family should come first. It did, I said. For 32 years. You just didn't notice. Mom flinched like I'd slapped her. Olivia, that's not fair. Fair? My voice cracked on that word. I swallowed, forcing it steady. You announced a major leadership change to my company on LinkedIn without telling me. You let Brandon tell the world he was COO while Mark is sitting in his office wondering why you've decided to erase him. Clients can see it. Our staff can see it. Do you know what that does to trust? To morale? You're making this so dramatic, Mom said. We just wanted to give your brother a chance. You have something solid, successful. He doesn't. What does it cost you to share? There it was. The core belief they'd never said out loud. My success existed so it could be harvested for Brandon. Noah shifted beside me, the slightest movement, but I felt it like an anchor. Richard cleared his throat again. Just to be absolutely clear, we are not discussing whether Brandon is a good person or whether families should hypothetically help each other. We are discussing a forced executive appointment that violates your operating agreement and is already causing reputational and operational damage. Dad leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. So what if we don't sell? Then you're choosing arbitration, Richard said, not missing a beat. Which, given the documentation we already have from this LinkedIn stunt, you will likely lose. On top of that, you'll pay legal fees. On both sides. We'll call a board meeting, Dad shot back. We'll vote. We'll drag this out. We'll make every decision hell for you. You can call as many meetings as you like, Richard said cheerfully. They won't change the fact that Olivia and Noah control 65% of the company. That's majority ownership. Operational control rests with them, not you. Mom looked at me, really looked at me. She'd come into this room expecting the same daughter she'd always known. The one who swallowed her anger, who bought her own birthday cake because everyone forgot, who sat next to Brandon at Christmas and listened to him brag about his latest doomed venture while they all nodded along. Instead, she'd found someone willing to sign a check to get away from them. Olivia, she whispered, Brandon is your brother. I know, I said, and this is my company. Silence. Noah's voice was low when he spoke, but there was steel in it. We're not running a rehab center for careers, Helen. We're running a consulting firm. Our team didn't sign up to be collateral damage in your parenting decisions. Dad snapped his gaze to him. You stay out of this. This is a family matter. Noah smiled without humor. This is my company too, and my COO, and my team. That makes it very much my matter. Maybe this was a mistake, Dad said. Maybe we should have listened to Richard when he said not to mix family and business. But you begged us for that money. I didn't beg, I cut in sharply. I made you a pitch. I gave you a valuation, a plan, and a timeline. You negotiated hard. You asked for 35%. You got it. We all signed. This wasn't charity. It was a deal. And you've made it clear you don't respect the boundaries that deal put in place. Mom's eyes filled again. We were trying to help your brother. I felt something inside me go very still, like a switch flipped. And I'm trying to help my employees, I said. My clients, myself. You're asking me to trade all of that for his 8th shot at something he hasn't earned. Dad slammed the folder shut. We're not signing anything today. I didn't expect you to, I said. You have 30 days to respond. Accept, counter at a reasonable number supported by evaluation, or reject and go to arbitration. Those are your options. That clause doesn't mean what you think it does, he muttered. Richard turned his laptop so they could see. Section 7.3, he said. You can read it again if you like. I drafted it. It means exactly what we think it does. Dad stood up so abruptly his chair scraped back. This isn't over. I know, I said quietly. That's why I brought my lawyer. For a split second, I thought he might say something that wasn't a threat. Something like, I'm disappointed, or we can work this out. Instead, he spat, we'll see you in court, and stalked out. Mom lingered a moment longer. Her eyes were shiny, her mouth trembling at the corners. You're choosing money over family, she whispered. No, I said. I'm choosing boundaries over chaos. There's a difference. Her face crumpled, and she followed my father out. The door shut behind them with a soft final click. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Noah let out a slow breath. Well, that was awful. It was necessary, Richard said. He closed his laptop with a gentle snap. They've been planning this for weeks, maybe months. Brandon posting this morning wasn't excitement, it was strategy. How do you know? I asked. Because I've seen this movie before, he said. Family businesses, minority shareholders who think a percentage equals control. They play the family card when they want something and the legal card when they want to force it. You did the right thing, Olivia. I stared at the closed door. It didn't feel like the right thing. It felt like tearing something out of my chest with my bare hands. Right now, I said quietly, my mother thinks I chose my company over my brother. Richard gathered his papers. You chose not to let your brother's delusions and your parents' favoritism burn down what you built. That distinction may never matter to them. It matters to everyone who works for you. He left us there, the room suddenly too big, too quiet. Noah reached for my hand under the table. I hadn't realized I was shaking until his fingers wrapped around mine. "Hey," he said softly, "look at me." I did. "You didn't start this," he said. "They did. They gambled that you'd be too afraid to push back. Today you proved them wrong." "I just bought my parents out of my life," I said. It sounded dramatic in my ears, but also true. $750,000 to have my dad tell every relative I'm heartless. "They were already telling people Brandon deserved the company more," Noah said. "At least now they don't get to decide what happens to it." My phone buzzed on the table. Slack notification. Then another. Then a third. I picked it up, thumb hovering over the screen. Messages from Mark. From Sarah in HR. From one of our senior consultants. Mark's was simple. "Can we talk? I need to understand what's happening." I swallowed. "I have to fix this," I said. "You will," Noah said. "Start with the truth." I walked out of the conference room and into my office, closing the door behind me. Then I called Mark. He picked up on the first ring. "Olivia," he said, voice tighter than I'd ever heard it. "Is my job safe or not?" "Yes," I said. "You are our COO. That hasn't changed." There was a pause. "Then why is your brother announcing he's COO on LinkedIn and tagging the company? Why am I finding out from my college roommate who saw the post before I did?" "Because my parents decided to force something through without telling us," I said. "We did not hire Brandon. We did not authorize that post. And we are in the process of removing their influence completely." "Removing," he repeated slowly. "How?" "I just triggered a buyout clause," I said. "We're buying their 35% stake. They won't be shareholders anymore. They won't be on the board. They won't have a say in hiring decisions. We're also sending a cease and desist letter to Brandon to get that post removed." Silence on the line. I could almost hear him thinking. "How much is that going to cost you?" he asked finally. $750,000, I said, because if I wanted his trust, I owed him honesty. Maybe a bit more if they negotiate up within reason. "That's a lot of money to spend getting rid of your parents," he said quietly. "That's a lot of money to spend protecting this company," I replied. "Protecting you. Protecting the people who actually show up and do the work." Another pause. "Okay," he said at last. "You get 24 hours. "For what?" "To show me that this isn't just a gesture," he said. "I get calls from recruiters twice a week. I stay because I believe in how we do things here. If this becomes a place where someone can just swing in with a last name and take my job, that belief dies." "It won't," I said, "not while I'm here." "You've got one day to prove that," he said. "Then I start returning those calls." He hung up. 24 hours to secure a COO, calm a team, and hold my family at arm's length. I thought of my mother's face when she said, "You're choosing money over family." For the first time in my life, I let myself think a quiet, treacherous thought. Maybe family had already chosen, just not me. That night, my apartment felt too quiet. I sat on the couch with the lights off, clutching a throw pillow like it was a flotation device. The city outside my window buzzed with its usual energy. Cars humming, distant sirens, the muffled thump of someone's music through the wall. But inside, it was just me and the weight of what I'd done. My phone buzzed once, then again, 42 unread messages, all from family. Aunt Linda, Uncle Tyler, my grandmother, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, even people I barely knew who somehow felt entitled to an opinion. Every single message had the same script. "Your mom is devastated. Family comes first. How could you do this to your brother? Brandon deserves a chance too. This isn't who you are, Olivia." I didn't answer. At first out of shock, then out of strategy, then, finally, out of self-preservation. By message 25, I turned my phone on Do Not Disturb. By message 35, I blocked 3 numbers. By message 41, I stopped apologizing to myself for the relief that came with each block. At 10 p.m., Noah called. "You holding up?" he asked. "No," I said honestly. "You?" "Also no." He hesitated. "Mark texted me again. He wants to know if he should start interviewing." My stomach twisted. "What did you tell him?" "That you're handling it," Noah said. "But Liv, if we lose Mark, the senior team falls apart. They're loyal to him." "I know," I whispered. "And I told him we'd show him we're serious. Tomorrow, first thing." "You will. We will. Together." His voice softened. "We didn't build this thing by accident, Liv. You did the right thing today." "It doesn't feel like it." "It will," he said. "Eventually. Call me if you need me." I didn't call, but I also didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's face when she said, "You're choosing money over family." Every time I opened them, I saw Mark's LinkedIn profile and the words, "Open to new opportunities." I was still awake when the sun came up. At 7 a.m., Mark was waiting in my office, a coffee in his hand and an expression that said he'd been awake even longer than I had. 24 hours, he said. Time's up. I sat down across from him, smoothing my blouse like I could iron out the panic clinging beneath my skin. "I'm not replacing you," I said. "I'm not hiring Brandon. I'm buying out my parents. I have the paperwork here." I handed him the documents Richard and I had reviewed. Mark skimmed, then read more carefully. His eyes flicked up to mine. "You're serious?" "Yes. All of this, just to stop them?" "To protect the company," I corrected. "And you. And everyone else who works here. I meant what I said yesterday. You're our COO, that's not changing." He closed the folder slowly, like he was thinking through every implication. "How much is this costing you again?" he asked. "About $750,000, I said. "Potentially 800. Mark leaned back, letting out a low whistle. "That's a lot of money to get rid of your parents." "That's a lot of money to keep you," I said simply. "But I meant it. I'm not letting their chaos become our culture." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, finally, "Okay," he said, "I'll stay, but I need one thing from you." "Name it." "No more family," he said. "No cousins, no uncles, no nephews, no nieces. I don't care if they're qualified. Family and business don't mix." I didn't even hesitate. "Deal." We shook hands. For the first time in 24 hours, I felt my lungs fill fully. One crisis down. A dozen more to go. 16 days later, Richard called. "They want to negotiate," he said. Noah was in my office. I put the call on speaker. "What's their number?" Noah asked. 800,000, Richard said. "They claim the company's growth trajectory justifies a higher valuation." "That's not how valuation works," Noah muttered. "I'm aware," Richard said dryly. "But they're emotional. They're hoping you'll cave because you're family." "What did you tell them?" I asked. "That we'd consider the number if they provide an independent valuation supporting it. They have 5 days." 5 days passed. No valuation arrived. "Just another call." "They'll accept 800,000, Richard said. "Final offer." Noah exhaled. "And their condition?" "They want Brandon considered for a lower-level role," Richard said. "Something entry-level, maybe an assistant or junior analyst. They said he could work his way up." He paused. Not my words. "No," I said immediately. "Not negotiable. The money is fine. Brandon gets nothing." "Understood," Richard said. "I'll relay that." 24 hours later. "They've accepted," he said. Just like that, my parents were almost out of my company, almost out of my life. 3 weeks later, the closing took place at a neutral attorney's office, polished, sterile, expensive. My parents sat on one side of a long table. Noah, Richard, and I sat on the other. Mom's eyes were red. Dad's jaw was clenched so tight I thought he'd crack a tooth. The attorney read through the agreement in a monotone voice that made the whole thing feel surreal. Transfer of ownership, release of rights, finalization of payment. The wire confirmation hit my inbox. 800,000 transferred. Mom reached for her copy with shaking hands. Dad stood slowly. He paused at the door and looked back at me. "I hope it was worth it," he said. I met his gaze, steady for the first time in my life. "Protecting what I built?" I said quietly. "Yes, it was." They left. The door clicked shut. Richard closed his folder. "Well," he said, "that went smoother than I expected." I let out a breath I'd been holding for weeks. "It doesn't feel smooth." "Family never does," he said. "But you did the right thing." I didn't answer. Because right now, I didn't know if right and wrong even mattered. All I knew was that the room felt emptier without them in it. Not better. Not worse. Just emptier. A clean space where something old had finally ended. As we stood to leave, I caught Noah's eye. "We're free," he said softly. I nodded. "We'll see." 2 months passed, with no calls from my parents. No text from Brandon. Just quiet. Productive, intoxicating quiet. Without my parents in the boardroom, decisions that used to take 3 meetings now took 10 minutes. The team felt lighter. Mark thrived. Our projects ran smoother than they had in years. And then, on a Monday morning, reception called. "Liv," Jenny said, voice tight, "your brother is here. He's asking about his office." I froze. "His what?" "He says he's the new COO," she said. "He's standing in the lobby." My pulse spiked. "Noah," I said, already standing, "and he's here." He looked up from his laptop, eyes widening. "Seriously?" "Seriously," Jenny added. "Do you want me to call security, or—" I shook my head. "No, do exactly what we talked about." Her tone shifted, suddenly calmer. Got it. I took a deep breath. Noah touched my arm. You ready? Absolutely not, I said. Let's go. We headed toward reception. Brandon was waiting there in a designer suit, expensive briefcase in hand, confidence radiating off him like cologne. Hey, Liv, he said brightly. Ready to get started? Where's my office? I stared at him, and that was when I realized. He had absolutely no idea. Brandon beamed at me like this was some kind of surprise party I'd thrown for him. I figured Mom told you I was coming in today, he said, adjusting his perfectly styled hair. She said to give you a couple months to calm down after the buyout. You know, let the dust settle. Anyway. He clapped his hands lightly. Show me where my office is? Behind the reception desk, Jenny stood poised, calm, and subtly bracing herself like a bartender about to break up a bar fight. I forced my voice steady. Brandon, what are you doing here? He looked genuinely confused. Starting my job. Mom said you were being stubborn before, but you'd come around. She said to show up, get settled, and meet the team. So here I am, Mom said. Of course. Noah stepped a little closer to me, just enough for me to feel his presence like a shield at my back. Brandon, Noah said firmly, you do not work here. Brandon rolled his eyes. Dude, I know you're upset about the buyout thing, but my parents told me everything would work out once Liv cooled off. This is a family business, and I'm family. It's time I had a real role, not just cheering from the sidelines. He opened his arms in a wide gesture, like waiting for applause. Go, he said proudly. That's big, big for all of us. Jenny, in her professional, neutral receptionist voice, spoke up. Mr. Hartford, she said politely, I have your new employee packet ready. He blinked. Oh, already? Great. He winked at me. See, you guys made this easy. Jenny reached under the desk and lifted the folder we had prepared 3 months ago, the contingency plan Noah and I created the moment the buyout closed. Facilities maintenance specialist, $15 an hour, reports to building operations manager. The job description had been written with legal precision: cleaning duties, supply checks, trash removal, facilities upkeep, full benefits after 90 days. Brandon took the folder with a grin, flipping it open casually as he talked. So, I figured I'd meet senior staff this afternoon. His voice stopped. His eyes scanned the first page again, and again, then slower. Confusion appeared first, then disbelief. Then his face went red, then purple. What the hell is this? Your employment packet, Jenny said calmly. This says he choked, a janitor. Facilities maintenance specialist, she corrected politely. Sir, this is a joke. He snapped the folder shut. Liv, tell her this is a joke. It's not, I said. Brandon's voice rose. I'm not a janitor. Then you're not an employee here, I said plainly. Those are your options. He stared at me, stunned into silence. You can accept the facilities maintenance position, I continued, or you can leave. You're serious. He said it like the words tasted awful. Completely, I said. He jabbed a finger at the packet. I am not cleaning bathrooms. I'm the CO. No, I said. You're not. You never were, and you never will be. He turned to Noah as if hoping for backup. Say something. You can't just... No, Noah said coldly. You don't get to talk your way out of this. You tried to steal Mark's job publicly. You tried to force your way into leadership. You lied on LinkedIn. That's not ambition, Brandon. That's fraud. That wasn't fraud, he snapped. Mom and Dad told me it was happening. Your parents, I said, have had zero authority at this company for 3 months. He blinked at me. Once. Twice. What? They sold their shares, I said. All of them. They are no longer shareholders. They are not on the board. They have no say in hiring. None. Brandon's mouth hung open. They didn't tell me that, he whispered. Of course they didn't. They'd rather let him walk blindly into humiliation than deal with the emotional fallout themselves. That realization hit him like a gut punch. I saw it happen, his shock folding into something raw. For a split second, he looked like a kid who'd just realized his parachute was a backpack. Then the anger came roaring back. You're enjoying this, he snarled, aren't you? I'm not enjoying anything, I said, but I'm not sacrificing my company to give you your 8th second chance. He threw the folder across the reception desk. Papers scattered like confetti. This is unbelievable, he snapped. You're both unbelievable. Mom and Dad are going to hear about this. They already know, I said. He stared at me. His face crumpled, just slightly. Then he spun on his heel and stormed toward the glass doors, shoulders stiff, breath heaving. He yanked the door open and disappeared into the lobby. For a long moment, the entire office was silent. Then, soft clapping. One person. Then another. Then another. Half the floor. It wasn't loud. but it was real. Jenny bent down, calmly gathered the scattered papers, slid them back into the folder, and placed it neatly in a drawer. That, she said, was the most fun I've had at work in 6 years. Noah put an arm around my shoulders. You okay? No, I said, but I will be. That night, we went to the dive bar 2 blocks from the office. The same one where we celebrated our first $100K contract with cheap whiskey and French fries in plastic baskets. We're $800,000 poorer, Noah said, raising his glass. We'll make it back in 18 months, I said, clinking mine to his. Maybe sooner. He grinned. I like when you're cocky. I checked LinkedIn out of morbid curiosity. Brandon's profile still said, Chief Operating Officer, Hartford and Morrison, Consulting. No, I muttered. Absolutely not. Noah leaned over. Give it time. 6 hours later, he updated it. Consultant, available for strategic partnerships. Noah snorted. He doesn't know when to quit. He never has, I said. 2 months passed. Not a single call from my parents. Not a single text from Brandon. Just silence. A silence so clean it felt like air after rain. Without family interference, the business transformed. Decisions were faster. Teams happier. Mark thrived. In month 3, we landed 2 Fortune 500 clients. Combined value, $780,000 a year. Mark overhauled our delivery model, improving efficiency by 15%. Revenue climbed. Clients stayed longer. By month 5, we needed a bigger office. We leased 10,000 square feet on the 14th floor. 3 conference rooms, glass walls, room for 20 more employees. The day before we signed the new lease, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Hello, Olivia, a warm, professional voice said. This is Melissa Chen from INOV. My heart jumped. Their CTO was Tyler Chen, one of Noah's old contacts. We met briefly at last year's conference, Amanation, she said. Tyler mentioned your firm did excellent work for Morrison Industries. We're looking for strategic consulting support for a major digital transformation initiative. 3-year engagement, potentially large. How large? I asked. About $1.9 million annually, she said lightly, plus performance bonuses. My vision blurred. We're interested. The pitch took 4 hours. They asked hard questions. We gave sharp answers. At the end, Tyler shook my hand. Between us, he said, you're our first choice. On Friday, the signed contract arrived. $5.7 million total. Noah held the pages like they were gilded. Your parents' stake, he murmured, would be worth about $1.8 million now. They sold for $800,000, I said. They lost $1 million by forcing Brandon. I shrugged, though the ache in my chest was real. They made their choice. You regret it? He asked quietly. I thought about it, really thought. The dinners I wouldn't attend anymore. The birthdays I might skip. The version of family I'd once hoped existed. No, I said softly. They chose Brandon over good judgment. I chose the business over family politics. We all got what we prioritized. Noah nodded slowly. Then you chose right. 2 months later, I learned something that stopped me mid-sentence during a client meeting. Melissa Chen laughed over coffee, saying casually, I almost hired your brother, you know. My blood went cold. You what? Back in January, she said, waving a hand. Saw his COO title on LinkedIn. Thought working with someone from your leadership team would be smart for a startup like mine. My chest tightened. Oh. But then I mentioned it to Tyler Chen at a networking event, she continued. He said, Olivia's brother? No way. He doesn't work there. Olivia owns the company outright. So I checked again. Brandon had updated his profile by then. That's actually why Tyler called you about the INOV contract. I stared. Because Tyler said anyone who can handle family drama that professionally can handle business drama even better. She laughed. He was right, by the way. I sat frozen. The biggest contract of my life, $5.7 million, had come not in spite of Brandon's stunt, but because of it. Noah was speechless when I told him. That's bizarre, he said, and poetic. 1 year after Brandon's infamous LinkedIn post, our revenue reached $7.2 million. We expanded to 45 employees. Our culture was strong. Our pipeline was full. The new office buzzed with energy. And then, Mark walked into my office smiling. Northwestern's business school invited me to guest lecture, he said. They want to feature our firm as a case study in sustainable scaling. That's incredible, I said. They also asked if you'd co-present, he added, about leadership, boundaries, protecting culture. I froze. What did you say? I murmured. That I'd ask you, he said. But honestly, I think you should. You built something special here. He left. I sat there alone, staring out at the city glittering below. My phone rested on the desk. Mom's handwritten letter sat saved in my photos. I'd read it 50 times. I still hadn't replied. Maybe I never would. Maybe someday. But for now, I had work to do. Work that mattered. Work that was mine. And that was enough.